Okay, we're about ready to begin now. Part of the reason in coming together, of course, is to give you all a chance to network and meet new people who are doing similar work. So I know this break time is important to you. But we're trying to stay on schedule because at 3 o'clock we have a student panel, and they are on a tight schedule. In fact, one of the students is taking a test right now, and he'll come right here after the test. So for now, having heard from Dr. McPherson on national trends and the importance of focusing our attention on college completion rates, we turn to Drs. Wilcox and Meningall to hear about what USF is doing right now to improve student success. So I'd ask them now to come up on stage or wherever you want to present, and we'll get started. You want to stay there, right?
I think we're going to stay downstairs if everyone can see us and hear us. And how did you like that presentation, by the way? Terrific. It's a little daunting. That's where I mustn't stand. Little daunting, of course, following the footsteps of Dr. McPherson, but I think he laid some tremendous groundwork for us to continue our conversation around student success. And as we did earlier this year, as Dr. Meningall and I traveled around campus meeting with various groups, it will be a little bit of the Ralph and Jennifer show here. We'll be playing off one another for the next 30 minutes or so, and hopefully at the end we'll have an opportunity for some exchange with the audience. As you've heard me say many times, and I hope you've committed it to memory and you truly believe it, that nothing is more important at the University of South Florida than the success of our students. The challenge sometimes is understanding what student success really means. Ours is a very holistic approach. Last night, as you heard, I did have the opportunity to spend a little time with Dr. McPherson, and while I certainly like this notion of starting at the start line and crossing the finish line, if we simply subscribe to a linear model, I think we're selling ourselves short. It really is, in so many ways, a much more comprehensive, and Frank or David, I think, David Frankel asked the question about what are the other elements of student success beyond simply graduating on time. And I think you're going to hear something of that in the next few moments. Clearly, it begins with preparedness, student preparedness, college preparedness. It's not simply a matter of assuming that students come into a university fully prepared to succeed academically in other ways, and just providing them the coursework, the support structures to ensure that success, their success and their progression through the university. Once they graduate, our responsibility isn't done. So you have identified the importance of investing in our Career Center, ensuring that our students, our graduates, are prepared to progress further into the marketplace, perhaps, and not simply into the marketplace, but to ensure their success in an ever more global and globally competitive marketplace, but also onto graduate school, or into first professional degrees, medical school, law school, and the like. And along the way, you have defined student success as meaning much more than simply academic success, graduating after 3 years, or maybe 4 years, or 5 years. That's it, we hope, as we move forward. So we're going to spend a few moments talking and sharing with you something of the accomplishments that we have made to this moment in time. We, and I do say that with great pride, collectively on your behalf, because it's tremendously exciting for me to be able to look out across this ballroom and see representatives from all corners of the university community, from our university police to our library, to our physical plant, to our student affairs, residential life, to our faculty cohorts across campus. It's only when each and every one of us in this community show the care and own student success that we're going to see and realize the type of gains that we have projected for ourselves. Let's see if I can figure this one out. Jennifer, you handed this to me, and you wanted me to play with it first, didn't you? There we go. Oh, wow. Now I'm in trouble. Let's go back. There we go. So again, one of the primary goals that emerge from our task force or recommendations from the task force is to institutionalize student success as a permanent priority for the university. You can read that. How have we done that? Simply stated through elevating and extending. It's not simply raising the importance of student success across the university community, but in all corners of the university as well. To establish clear performance benchmarks. This is one of the expectations that Dr. McPherson had laid out for us. Not a problem at the University of South Florida. We understand, and we've readily embraced over the past 5 to 10 years, the importance of setting goals, establishing benchmarks for ourselves in a whole variety of areas. And if you look to our strategic plan, they're all there. We have goals, and they are stretch goals for graduation rate, for FTICs, those freshman students, graduation rates for community college transfers into the university, reducing time to degree for our graduate students, because, again, Frank asked the question, and it's a great question, about student success and the unique challenges associated with enhancing student success in a research-intensive environment. For us to ignore, for us to focus only on freshmen at the expense of the large number of transfer students, the large number of graduate students at the university would be selling ourselves short. So at the graduate level, we focus less on graduation rates as measured at the undergraduate level, but more upon condensing that time to graduation, how many years it takes to complete a PhD in history before you make history, how many years it takes for you to graduate with a master's degree in physics and so forth. Recommendation number 2, integrating student success into the institutional culture, building it into the life of the institution, all that we do. Changing the message, and this is where everyone has to share and communicate that message, that 6 years, simply coming to the University of South Florida, being successful in being admitted and enrolling here and ticking along over the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years just is not acceptable. It's not acceptable on a number of levels. It's going to limit access for future generations of students. Frankly, it's going to cost our students considerably. The longer they stay, it's going to cost them more. It's going to build up their level of indebtedness. So when they do graduate, they're not going to be very satisfied or happy students, graduates of the university. By condensing that period and having them graduate, hit professional or graduate school or the marketplace earlier is going to benefit them in so many ways. Part of this certainly is focused on the 4 A's, and you all recognize the importance of access and affordability, the attainment of our students, and institutional accountability. And we can talk more about that later, perhaps. And I think most importantly, and again, this comes back to a couple of the questions asked earlier about the fit and the challenges associated with student success in a research-intensive environment. We've worked very hard at USF, and I speak now for the Tampa campus only, of aligning all of our strategic priorities. So we believe sincerely that research and innovation is an integral part of student success, whether those students are freshman students, whether they're PhD students, that developing those skills, those competencies that will allow our graduates to be that much more successful in the marketplace or in graduate school are incredibly important and a distinctive element of success at the University of South Florida. The ability to cross disciplinary boundaries with ease, with comfort, as one seeks innovative solutions to pervasive problems that we face in society. Global literacy and global impact. We don't believe that any of our graduates can be as successful as they need to be in the 21st century without the skills, the competency base that allows them to navigate their in an ever more complex and globalized world, and of course community engagement. All very, very important to the success of our students. So it's not a matter of which of our strategic priorities is more important than another. It's a matter of how do we integrate in much the same way that you see the symbol for today's, or the logo for today's conference being the interlocking jigsaw pieces. I ask you to think, how about how we best interlock community engagement and global literacy and impact with student success and with the other elements of our plan. We talked a little bit, you heard earlier, the President mentioned a $3 million investment in student success this year, putting our money, if you will, where our mouth is. If $3 million were the extent of it, on a campus of 40,000 students, we frankly wouldn't be making much of any inroads at all into improving or enhancing the success of our students. Clearly, that's just scratching the surface. We look to see what, for instance, athletics, our athletic department, and we had some representatives here from athletics, their Apple initiative to enhance student success when student athletes are on the road, allowing them to connect with their professors, with their classes here, I think is an indication. The 24/5 commitment that the Dean of Libraries and the library staff has made in response to student demand to make the library more broadly accessible to support their academic success is a good indicator. The number of faculty we have hired, investments that fall outside of that $3 million investment for this year, the continued investment in financial aid and so on and so forth. $3 million is nice, it's focused, but when we start to add up all of these strategic investments intended to enhance student success, I think you get a scope of how very, very important all of what we're doing has become. Our commitment to student success, and I'll move through this pretty quickly. It's a refresher for most of you. You'll become all too familiar. Yes, we focus more and more on college preparedness. Dr. Meningall in a moment will share with you some of the successes we've realized in enhanced campus engagement at the university, our ongoing conversations surrounding affordability and financial aid, and what we've accomplished there, the implementation of much more intrusive advising. One of the biggest mistakes we can make when we speak of student success is assuming that the undergraduate or the graduate school experience today in 2010 is as it was when we were in college. These are different times and demand different times that demand different solutions to nonetheless similar problems or challenges perhaps. Some of the efforts that are underway to enhance curriculum design, curriculum delivery, and the kind of support that is necessary academically for our students to succeed. Enriching our educational experiences, some of the academic policy revisions, and last but not least, because it does begin the cycle rather than a linear start at the start line and cross the finish line, it actually circles back around, and we can talk something of that notion in a moment. Over the past 5 or 6 years, certainly we've seen a significant uptick in efforts toward enhancing the academic preparedness of our students. Yes, we've seen our admission standards increase, but not at the expense of some other very, very important considerations. For those of you who have read Dr. Bowen's and Dr. McPherson's book, you'll realize that I'm speaking tongue-in-cheek when I say that if we were to admit a freshman class of wealthy Asian women, we wouldn't have any problem with our graduation rate at all. Because the evidence provided in that book is that that particular sector of of students enrolled in higher education will graduate with a high probability at a rate of 94% in 6 years. Of course, we value diversity. Our students tell us, and those employers that hire our graduates tell us that there is immense value in the diverse perspectives and diverse experiences that a much more diverse student population brings to our educational experience. We are not going to play the numbers and forsake our principles and forsake our mission at the University of South Florida. We're going to continue to commit to enrolling a diverse student body that will enhance the quality of education, the relevance of education at the University of South Florida, even if enrolling a freshman class, of which nearly a full third are Pell recipients and therefore lower socioeconomic from lower socioeconomic strata in society, that bring their own set of challenges to realizing higher graduation rates. We're going to stick with our principles, with our values, with our commitment to diversity. Our undergraduate admissions office, our graduate school has been doing a tremendous job in working out there in the community with high schools, with community colleges across the state of Florida, throughout the nation, and with partner institutions that have created pipelines into our graduate school. And that's going to continue as we move forward. Some other examples of investments that we have made to enhance the preparedness of students admitted to and enrolled at the University of South Florida. And I'll just move through these slowly, and you can read them for yourselves. All familiar story, but sometimes when we don't take the time to step back and reflect on what we have invested in, what we have accomplished, we tend to sell ourselves short. We're not satisfied, we're proud of where we've been and what we've accomplished, but we're not yet satisfied, and we're going to have to maintain that strategic focus, that discipline to improve the success of our students. Dr. Menningal. Would you like me to stand close and you can...
A part of what you're going to hear is really some of the same things over and over again, and that's not because we've been remiss. It's because there are significant elements of any student success program that must be integrated across all of the areas in which we find ourselves working in order to create this environment of student success. And if I would, I'd like to pause right there to once again say, and you've heard it a couple of times today, that really what USF is embarking upon is really a cultural shift in its focus on students, their progress, their experience, and then ultimately their success, both from USF and into a larger world. And so if we can think about student success from a very holistic point of view and a very collaborative, very whole university point of view, what I'm about to do is just in broad categories share with you another bit of research that tells us to categorize our success efforts in this way. And that's that research that's called Student Success in College by George Koo and John Shue and Elizabeth Witt. And some of you know that work. And there are 5 categories that they work on. That's academic challenge, active and collaborative learning, student, faculty, and student-student interactions, enriching educational experiences, supportive campus environments. And so as you think about your own work, and so much of what you're hearing about initiatives are things that you are doing yourselves. This is not what outside of us. You're producing this work and therefore adding to the institutional's commitment and initiatives to success. So when we think about campus engagement, again, you know, there's this African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. I want us to think about our success efforts that it takes an entire university to educate a student. When we see students walking across the graduation stage, we often think about how happy they are, the degree they're receiving. But if you pause just a moment and think about the number of touches or the number of interactions or the number of exposures that you had in one way or another to that single student, then you get the opportunity to celebrate with them because we were given the privilege to help them walk across that stage and then ultimately help them make decisions about how they will further live their lives as a result of this experience at USF. So if you can think about that in that manner, then hopefully you can begin to think that your role matters to our institutional effort and commitment to students and their success. And then it becomes our success, and therefore we work in that vein. That's the idea of the culture shift. Now, in thinking about that, one of the areas that we have to consider is integrated and complementary student success initiatives are in place, and we know we have some of those. But the one thing that USF has to do is to begin to think about how those things fit together. The puzzle piece is a great illustration of that. How do these things fit together to influence the student's success? Is my work making a real difference connected with someone else's work to make students successful? Those are the kind of questions we have to ask ourselves. We can no longer operate in this sort of segregated, separated, divisional way. Matter of fact, it was interesting that Provost and I were having a meeting yesterday, and we were talking about maybe we can think of another way to define ourselves other than divisions, because the mere word says that there's something divided about that. Our students do not experience the campus that way. They are whole students with whole lives, and they want us to help educate them from that perspective. And this particular idea focuses on that. And so engaging in inclusive student community is things like student-to-student interaction, students involved in leadership opportunities, and these are things that we're already doing. Students who get to research outside of the classroom, who get to study abroad. They take their classroom and their out-of-classroom experience and create this entire experience. That they're not segregated and they don't not relate to each other. They absolutely do, and they send a message to the student about exactly how successful they can be. And that's from the first time that they walk onto this campus and get introduced to the starting strong to end successfully. That's transitional programs. That includes orientation. That includes the first day of class. That includes the way they get introduced to the campus and the social integration. So week of welcome, things like that matters to the student and the way they begin. If they begin strong, they can end successfully. And that's the way we have to think about that. Enhanced residential student experience. Now, you might think that we're talking about just the students that live in the residence hall. We're not. We're talking broader than that. What we want to create at the University of South Florida is a residential experience for all students. What does that mean? That means I'm connected here, I can grow here, I can contribute here, I can learn here, and I can graduate with a degree from here. And when I leave this place, I can mark and trace my success every step of the way, not just going to class and doing the work that the faculty member provides, but talking with them and interacting with them, getting to know their faculty and their major advisors, understanding that they have to bring something to the table in order that they will integrate with us or partner with us in their success. And so when we create this residential student experience, what we're in essence saying to the student is that this is the place that you have chosen, and you have chosen well. And so now you invest in creating, helping us to create not only the environment that will help you be successful, but the inputs that you will have to put in order to be successful. The creation and maintenance of a healthy and safe environment. Some of you have already experienced our SOCAT efforts. You've experienced some investments in more counseling. The reason we're doing that is because if you or I don't feel safe in this environment, we won't function fully. That's the same thing that happens with a student. We have to help them to understand that in order for you to be at your best as a student, you have to be healthy, you have to operate on from a wellness point of view, and that includes a whole range of wellness things, not only health, but also psychologically, are you well? Are you behaving in a way to get you to your outcome, which is to graduate? So are you studying well? Are you interacting with your peers well? Are you going to the library and utilizing those resources well? And then the safe environment, of course, is where we see our university police, our advocacy program, the campus kind of forms itself around this notion that this is your environment and we want you to navigate it in a way that you can pursue. High-quality student services. We have to do something, and I know we're working toward this already, to end what's called the runaround, the shuffle, the USF shuffle. We have got to get to a place where we think about how do I feel when I walk. I was going to name a particular location. You know, I like
the provost's office. I know you like
when I go into Walmart versus when I go into Target, I have a very different experience. Walmart is large. I don't understand the mapping. Now, I'm going to place it on me. I don't understand the mapping. There's so much stuff everywhere. To me, the lighting's low. So then I make a decision that there's another place for me to go that has the same items. Now, they're a little bit more expensive, but I can navigate it. They don't greet me at the door as they do at Walmart, but that doesn't matter to me because I can navigate it. I feel like I can find my way. I can get what I need and get in and out. I don't have the nightmare in parking like I do at Walmart. Okay? So I choose to go to a place where I feel like I can be successful. That's not different than high-quality services. If it's hard for me to get anything done, if it's unclear for me, the rules are unclear or they change every day, or if it's just frustration to do simple things, then it affects my ability to find my way here and then ultimately affects my feeling about this place, my demeanor about this place, and I may not stay. Or if I do stay, I might be disgruntled. And so we have to think through whether we are designed and utilizing our resources in a way to create the highest quality of services possible. Do we communicate across departmental lines when policy changes and things like that? So we don't have a student in one place, we send them over to another place, and the first place they were didn't know that the rules changed. So it's very practical, and we're working really hard toward this because that's a basic. And then consistent and effective student communication channels. When I went to school, we talked to each other face to face. Today it's a little bit different. Now, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's MySpace, there's all sorts of things. And students communicate differently. If we do not keep up with that, then we're going to lose our ability to stay in touch with our students. Some of what we're doing in this area also is, most of you know, we required a first-year residency for freshman year. We know that students who live on campus have a tendency to be connected to the institution more powerfully, and they also have higher GPAs for the most part. They navigate and graduate quicker. The residential learning experience, I just talked about that. New mentoring initiatives, designing and implementing a required life skill collegiate success program. We're doing a lot. There's the evening programming that you've heard about. There's enhancing and understanding how students can be involved to help make decisions about what we offer them. So they are exercising in leadership opportunities. They are picking places to go study abroad. And then lastly, there's this whole university approach. And you've heard that over and over and over again. Everyone on this campus, and I love the example that Dr. McPherson used when he said, I approached the campus and the person who was doing the grounds stopped and came to me and said, how can I help you? And that's an attitude shift. That's a mind change shift. That's I am just as responsible on how this campus feels as the next person. And it doesn't matter what role I'm in. It doesn't matter what job I do. We have that look on our face when we're lost. And those of us who are not lost, how do we help them feel like you can find your way here? And so we have to take responsibility for that. Dr. Wilcox.
So again, maintaining the framework that we identified at the outset, let me just pause and reflect on why we're here this afternoon. It's not simply to celebrate or rehash what we have accomplished or we have implemented to this moment in time, but I want each and every one of you to reflect on, because we're going to ask you to respond to these questions in a moment. What does work? What of these initiatives has worked? What isn't working? And what are the gaps that we can identify? Beyond that, of course, the big question that is, I think, all over the documents you have, the question, what role will you play moving forward? Now, I understand from Dr. Dosal, our student success czar, you remember one of the recommendations coming out of the task force was that we identify a point person. I'm using the term czar. I still like that, but I think I lost that election, didn't I, in the report. But he is the point person, and I understand that each and every one of you, there's about 300 of you, from what I understand in the audience this afternoon, have been handpicked to ensure that we have embedded across the university strong advocates and leaders for student success. So part of your role, I will tell you, I will answer that question for you, is that you have a responsibility to communicate back, to help your colleagues, whether those colleagues are students, they're members of staff, your supervisors up, or those that you supervise down, help them understand what this thing called student success is all about, why it's important, and what it's going to take to enhance our performance in that regard. Certainly affordability and financial aid, you heard all too well earlier this afternoon from Dr. McPherson how important that is. We've worked hard to maintain affordable tuition. And when I say we, certainly not just the University of South Florida, but as you well know, the state legislature, the Board of Governors. It's still low. Tuition, the cost of a higher education in the state of Florida is one heck of a deal. And it's going to remain that way. I know our students are understandably concerned about consecutive 15% increases to tuition. We're concerned about that as well. And we will do all we possibly can, working with our Office of Financial Aid, working with our foundation, working to fund need-based financial aid from a variety of different sources to ensure that increased tuition doesn't, that was you, Dr. Meningol, doesn't unreasonably impact access and success of our students. Now, were you trying to move me through a little faster? Was that... I can't speak highly enough of the great work that our Office of Financial Aid has done over the past 12 to 24 months in communicating the availability of financial aid at the federal level, through promoting FAFSA, and through financial aid at the local, statewide level, and university financial aid. And again, you start to see some of the initiatives, and it's important, I think, that you all understand, because this should prompt questions as we move forward, either questions this afternoon or questions directly to Billy Joe Hamilton and her team. Billy Joe, raise your hand so everyone knows who you are. No, good, thank you. You can see the outreach programs. This isn't simply a 5-day-a-week operation. This is an operation that runs late into the evening, crosses holidays and weekends, as our staff, deeply committed staff, get out there into the community and helps prospective students, continuing students, parents of, particularly parents of first-generation students that don't have a clue about the challenges associated with accessing, enrolling, and being successful in higher education.
Provost Wilcox, if I might interject, that's also something we all have to think through. We're serving a population of students that don't just operate Monday through Friday. And so should we be examining our hours of operation, and when we offer, just as the financial aid office does, when we offer programs, activities, services, if we're really trying to meet student needs, are we doing that in the time periods that we offer opportunities?
The cost of going to college today isn't simply the cost of tuition in the state of Florida, which remains at 48th or 49th in the nation. But we need to recognize that increasingly the cost of living, transportation, purchasing textbooks, other supplies for life at college add up rapidly. Bob Spadig, we project today, is it about $18,000, the full cost of attendance for an undergraduate student? In-state. $18,000 a year. So when you see articles in the newspaper, or you see provosts quoted as saying, you know, it's a heck of a deal, $4,500, $5,000 for full-time tuition and fees at the University of South Florida, I certainly recognize, as many do, that that's not the full cost of attendance. And $18,000 year after year after year adds up very, very quickly and results in rapidly growing indebtedness if we don't get those students graduated and moving on. So there's a very real economic penalty associated with low 4-, 5-, and 6-year graduation rates. And we keep going. They've been busy, and the university's been busy, and rightfully so, in recognizing some of the challenges. You heard Dr. McPherson reference the importance of giving Donna Perino a blank check for $200,000. Well, I don't think we're going to do that, Donna. We may give you cash in a brown bag, but the fact of the matter is our Don't Stop, Don't Drop program, which was an initiative dreamt up by our president, really to serve as a safety net for those students who fall through, miss the opportunities associated with need-based financial aid from the federal, state, or even institutional level. Students for whom, as Dr. McPherson suggested, a spouse or a child got sick, and now all of a sudden they feel the economic stress of associated with attending and attaining a college education. So very, very important. Is this me? I think it is, isn't it? Intrusive advising. Again, this is hard for so many of us to understand, I think, because our college experience, more often than not, was one that was reasonably well structured for us, and we moved through on a lockstep fashion through our freshman year, sophomore, and we graduated in 4 years. The life of an undergraduate student in public higher education, and indeed in private higher education today in the United States, is quite different for very, very many reasons, not least of which are the many more distractions, perhaps, that they face today. We've learned, and when I say we, not just the University of South Florida, but the majority of institutions across the country have learned that to allow or to count on students to advise themselves is destined to create challenges. So greater intrusion into the academic planning and personal planning of students at the University of South Florida is going to be very, very important, complemented by an electronic platform, which you'll see here. Many of you are familiar with this platform that we're working to bring up live very, very soon, not soon enough for me, an electronic degree audit that we know our students will find both appealing because of the nature in which it presents itself, but also incredibly helpful as they move forward. We've also introduced some new advising policies that place holds, that obligate students to meet with advisors at key points throughout their education. If they progress in a positive way, they're on track, they're passing their courses, they're moving forward, the likelihood of these holds popping up are going to become less and less. But nonetheless, we have a responsibility to ensure that if they fall off track, if they don't meet those progression benchmarks, then we have a responsibility to step in and help. And we haven't always done that. We've been all too happy to send them notes that they're on academic probation or their final probation or they're dismissed from the University of South Florida, but that's too late. The interventions that we now have in place are, we believe, going to significantly enhance our students' experience and our students' progress and ultimate success. And much of this, as Dr. Meningol mentioned, is repetitive, deliberately so, and I hope indicative of the cross-fertilization, the partnership, the collaboration that we're starting to build and realize not across those divisions, and we agreed we're going to get rid of that word division, but across the various corners of an integrated university community, one integrated and committed to student success. Very, very quickly then, because we did agree that we would make some time available at the end for comment, criticism, constructive criticism, and questions. So these are all initiatives that we've implemented, or we are in the process of implementing. Dr. McWaters, you're in here somewhere, I think. The math department is taking a significant lead at the moment. We realize that one of the reasons, and there are many, but one of the reasons that our students' progress stalls on occasion is that they're not as successful in moving from one level of math to the next level of math. Our math department is taking this seriously, we're investing resources, but clearly recognizing the importance of the need to do things differently. Simply to point the finger at the students and say, well, you're not working hard enough, or too bad you weren't readily prepared in high school and therefore you're never going to succeed, is not a commitment on the part of the University of South Florida. So all kudos to our colleagues in math for taking this issue on with great rigor. We've reworked our class schedule to allow us to offer more sections, not always between 11 and 2 on Monday and Wednesday, which seems to be the only time that students want to take classes. But you're going to have to help. You're going to have to join Dr. Menningold, who goes around to the residence halls every morning at 7 o'clock and blows a trumpet. And the reality here is that we can only provide opportunity for students to succeed. Students have to accept some responsibility themselves. And that's what we're working on here. Our Student Success Center, Learning Commons in the library, a major transformation, as I hope you've witnessed over the past 6 to 12 months. The traffic, the custom, the number of students that are moving through that center is skyrocketing, Pat, isn't it, every week? So much so that I keep getting bills from them saying we need to hire more people to meet the increased student demand. Now, there's nothing more satisfying for provost to receive requests for providing additional support, academic support, but there are limits. And of course, as we look around campus here, you see with much excitement, I hope, that we have a variety of, even in the worst of economic times, new academic and student support buildings springing out of the ground. In the interdisciplinary science facility, which will be the largest facility on campus, to our music facility, to an expanded wellness and nutrition center, to the Patel Center that will have both academic, administrative, and student support services in it, and so on and so forth. Dr. Menningold.
We are really at your break time. And so what we will do is make it available on the website, make this presentation available on the website so you can download it and take a look at the specifications. But we really do want to give you an opportunity to ask questions of either of us, and so that we can keep the conference on schedule. So let's start with any questions, comments.
We have one over here to the right, and they can be declarations. They don't have to be questions.
Thank you, Provost Wilcox and Dr. Menningold, for the interesting presentation. Made me reflect on one of the issues which you raised about interventions. Now, often as a faculty, I get to know when my students have actually dropped from the course. So, and that's too late for me as a faculty to make any difference in the student's thinking, or even get a chance to speak to the student and find out and or even offer help to the student. So as a faculty, how can we potentially identify these students who would potentially drop out? That is, identify them before they have dropped out, and what can we do to make sure that they don't drop out? Like where can we direct them? And suppose if a student is going through financial hardship, what can we do as a faculty? I'm just asking these questions out of ignorance. I don't know the answer. Thank you.
We actually, that's probably one of the areas that we are trying to work diligently harder on to get information in the hands of every faculty member to do a couple of things. There are some early alert efforts that if you notice that a student's coming to class and falling asleep, or they're consistently not turning in assignments, or they're coming late, leaving early, constantly distracted, things like that, we're asking faculty to pay close attention to those things. And then we need to provide, administration needs to provide to each of you, what do you do in those cases? We do have some interventions already in place. If it's what I would call a very emergency or crisis situation, we have something called SOCAT, and it is Students of Concern Action Team. And what you do is you can refer to that group. If there are things like emergencies or other kind of circumstances, we do have some information that we can pass on to faculty to say, just check this out. If you're noticing this in a student, contact these offices, and those offices will get the student to the right place. So we just have to make sure we get that into the hands of each of the faculty members, and that's a big undertaking because we've tried to do that in a number of ways, but we often miss. So helping us to get those out to you would be great because the information is gathered. And an early alert, one of the things that the research tells us is early alert from faculty is one of the highest level of retention efforts that can be made, because you're right, often the faculty member is the person that sees the need first. Office, that's on that list. There are a number of offices on the list that we have created, and we'll make sure that we get your information to get it to you, but also we need to get it to every faculty member who wants it.
I think what you've identified is one of the unique challenges, well, not so unique challenges perhaps, with the size and complexity of this organization. I asked Dr. McPherson last night about how he affected, as president of Macalester College, how he affected student success. Well, he acknowledged on a campus of 1,800 students, it's a lot easier to communicate some of these issues and initiate some of these programs than it is on a sprawling 1,500-acre, 40,000 student, 10,000 employee community. But we can't simply give up. We've got to help enhance that communication, and each and every one of you, as I said earlier, we expect to play a significant role in that. Please.
Hi, I'm from the College of Marine Science, and my primary position is advising students that are looking to come to our program. And so and as an undergraduate, I am a first-generation graduate. So I know what it feels like going into college and not really having a support system. So it really is a personal issue that I bring this up to you, and in my position as well. I see that you want to do intrusive guidance counseling meetings, and I think that's one of the most important parts of success for a student, to have somebody that they can go to answer questions and make them feel comfortable doing that. I was wondering, in your idea of having these mandatory meetings, how are you going to better prepare the faculty that are meeting with the student to ensure the quality of those meetings?
Great. It's a great question, because you are implying one particular model. We're actually moving in a different direction. We're moving away from a faculty advising model and into a more professional advising model. When we looked at the student to faculty ratio about 3 years ago, we were frankly embarrassed. Embarrassed because the ratio was somewhere between 1 and 650 to 700 students per advisor. Well, in the best of times, it's going to be difficult in any given year for one advisor to meet with in a meaningful and constructive way with 700 students. So we committed a couple of years ago to, over a 3 or 4 year period, to reduce that ratio or to cut it in half. We're well away along that path at the moment. We've hired, I have to be careful here. I won't overpromise, but I think we've hired, by the end of this semester, we will have hired about 50 new advisors, academic advisors. But it doesn't end there. As you've rightly pointed out, there has to be adequate training, education, guidance for those advisors. But clearly, whether it's faculty members, whether it's advisors, those closer, regular, I'm not a big fan of the term intrusive, but in reality, that's what it needs to be. Interactions between students and members of the USF, professional members of the USF community, faculty and staff, is going to be very, very important.
This is probably one of the areas that your question posed brought to mind something else. There was academic advising, which the provost has just responded. And then there are the other kind of sort of counseling meetings. We have a counseling office, a wellness approach where if you as faculty members or advisors believe that there is a personal psychological counseling issue, then there is an office that addresses that for students. So this is an example of the integration of addressing the whole student, because all students are not always looking for the next list of courses to take. But they may be talking about managing the stress, handling their time schedule, not functioning well in this environment. And that's where we want to get all of this information to you so you know where to direct a student. You're not there alone, and there is a great deal of assistance across campus in a variety of ways.
Let me just comment briefly on why we made a commitment to shift from a faculty advising model to a professional advising model. And in essence, a very simple answer is that we wanted to ensure that our faculty were doing those things that they were best at. We need our faculty in the classroom. We need our faculty as a research-intensive university engaged in state-of-the-art, state-of-science scholarship and research, connecting with our students in the laboratory, in the community. So clearly recognizing the need to invest more in advising, we felt we were going to be best served in the future by hiring more professional advisors, and we have done that, and we will continue to do that as available resources allow. So it's another indication of our investment in student success and our commitment to that continuing.
Thank you so much for your being here today. It's a clear indication that you're joining with this strategic commitment to student success. Your questions, your inquiries, your research, your input matters, your role matters. And so we thank you so much for helping us to help students realize their dreams at a university that will be a part of their lives for the rest of their lives. Thank you.